How do products from your local farmer end up on your plate? What happens to food waste? Can we offer quality food in the fight against food poverty? Integrated urban food policies can answer these questions. And the FoodTrails project is helping cities develop their own to positively impact food systems. From farm to fork. The project operates under the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact and responds to the EU Food 2030 policy. Each partner city is running a living lab to find tangible solutions to specific food issues. From developing food councils to coordinating food aid, from strategic public procurement to food education. In FoodTrails, collaboration is a key ingredient. At the local level, relevant stakeholders are involved in designing solutions. And at project level, researchers and European cities come together to exchange and learn from each other. Create your own recipe for more sustainable, healthy and inclusive urban food policies. Join the FoodTrails momentum.
Welcome everyone to the 7th episode of the FoodTrails Webinar series, Midday Munchies on Urban Food Policy. We're delighted that you are here with us to hear from cities and experts about concrete ways and tools for cities to transition to more sustainable food systems. So I want to start off with a few words about the FoodTrails project. It's a 4-year EU-funded Horizon 2020 project, which aims to translate the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact collective commitment to integrating urban food policies into measurable and long-term progress towards sustainable food systems. So the project has worked with 11 European cities in supporting them to implement sustainable, healthy, and inclusive food policies. My name is Madeleine Coste, and I am the head of food policy and projects at Eurocities. And for those of you who don't know, Eurocities is the leading network of over 200 major European cities, working together to ensure a good quality of life for all our citizens. And one of our 7 goals is to support on urban food systems specifically. We're one of the FoodTrails project partners, where our main role has been to foster exchanges and peer learning between cities of the project, all looking to transition to sustainable food policies. Next slide, please. Today, we are here with some amazing speakers from who have been involved in the FoodTrails project from the start. We have Thom Achterbosch, who's a senior researcher from the Wageningen University and Research, Sarah Pullen, food systems lead at the Birmingham City Council, Andrea Patrucco, who's the FoodTrails project manager from the city of Milan, and myself. So on the next slide, please. What is this webinar series about? After almost 4 full years of the project, this webinar series aims at sharing beyond the project's consortium all of the knowledge and experiences built by the FoodTrails cities and experts. Like I said, we are on the 7th episode, and each episode has been aiming to promote the replication of solutions and best practices and hopefully inspire some of you to do the same in your own cities. So the series' past episodes have touched upon many different topics, like how to implement policies to reduce food waste, or how to leverage public procurement to promote sustainable school meals, or also which tools can help cities to take a more food systems approach and effectively drive change on the ground. So we're going to post in the chat the calendar of each episode, and you can also watch all of the recordings of the past webinars on our YouTube channel. The last episode will be next week, so you can already click on the link and register for that one. So today's webinar is going to focus on how we can finance cities' ambitions on food policies. So more and more cities are committing to improving local food systems. They're addressing issues such as improving the nutritional quality of school food, deploying composting systems, working with civil society to redistribute food waste, or bringing more local and seasonal food into the city. However, a common challenge that all municipalities face is funding. How can cities attract economic resources for funding actions and initiatives and ensure the sustainability of these actions in the long run? Many city officers that I have met over the last years have shared with me how their work and ambitions are limited by tight municipal budgets, particularly when facing budget cuts. One of the aims of the Food Trails project is to provide insight into the opportunities for liaising with various types of investors under the urban food policies. This has been shaped in the form of a dialogue with organizations in the investment arena and research on how to make cities more oriented towards financiers and investors. So we're first going to hear from Thom from Wageningen University in Research, who will give a presentation on impact investing, and then from Sarah and Andrea, who will share their insights from Birmingham and Milan on how they have successfully secured funding for their food policy work, and from the Food Trails project's work that they have carried out over the last 4 years. So during this episode, we're going to be talking about a number of things: impact investing to achieve the social and environmental goals defined in the food policies. How can cities benefit from innovative financial instruments and wide investment partnerships to fund pilot actions and contribute to food policies? How building relations on finance and investment is people's business and depends on the importance of relationships and collaboration. And finally, how municipalities are key funders of food policy actions through their budgets. When cities show that they can operate as investors, they're more attractive to external financiers. So we will also show some examples of this and how to secure core funding. Just a last point before giving the floor to Thom. There will be 20 minutes at the end for Q&A at the end of the session, so you can already start thinking about the questions you would like to get answered and post them in the Q&A function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And also, we're going to share in the chat a link to a very short survey that we ask you to fill in just so that we can collect feedback on the webinar series to make sure that it is useful to you. So without further ado, I'll invite Thom to come in for your presentation on impact investments.
Hello, colleagues. Thank you for joining us today. This is I'm very glad to have the opportunity to speak today on the topic of investment in urban food systems, and more so with the opportunity to work on this topic under the course of the Food Trails project. And it's been a very interesting journey, and there are some nice outcomes that I think would be interesting to share with you. Can I have the next slide, please? All of this work is in the end about making urban food policy economically sustainable. And through our work, we see the following 3 major ways of doing that. The first is to be ambitious in your food policy, and also to be ambitious with impact in how you spend money and resources from your municipal budgets on food policy. This signals the importance of food systems transformation in your city, and it brings other financiers in. The second is, when you think about food policy actions, some of them might come in with a business model. Not all of them, but for the ones that you want to have a sort of a future life, make sure that you partner with entrepreneurs upfront. And in order to do that, it would be good to nurture what we call an innovation ecosystem, where many actors and startups from early stages of innovation worked on food systems transformation, and investors will also look at that as an opportunity. The third is then how to involve financiers, and our emphasis has been specifically on involving impact investors. There are different roles of investors, which we can talk about, and they all come with their own financial instruments. So those are the topics that I will show in my presentation today. It's just a glance at the work that we've done. Next slide, please. So if cities are these critical locations for food systems transformation, I don't think that needs an explanation. Then think about the economy in the food policy. There is a lot of creativity in entrepreneurial arenas when it comes to food, and building those places and locations where entrepreneurs can contribute to food systems transformation is an important way of showing impact. Also, then the question comes up with how to achieve those cities' ambitions, and can cities partner up with investors on this? Next slide, please. Then it is important, first of all, to look at your own contribution as an investor before bringing other investment actors in. And I think a really great example will be shown today by Milan, by Andrea Patrucco, and the work in the food policy unit that have really showed meticulously how the food budgets indicate the investments that the cities are making. And that again is a platform on which other investors will come in. Next slide, please. So when it comes to impact investing, our research has been to explore if that can widen the reach of urban food policy and also its efficacy. So can you be more, have a wider scope with the food policy? Basically, there are tight fiscal budgets in municipalities, and leveraging your own resources to attract financial capital is a way to extend the scope of that, extend the ambition of that. But there is also an element there of becoming more effective with your spending by involving entrepreneurial solutions as part of providing public services. The basis of that, or an interesting viewpoint here, is then to look at impact investing, which is a specific form of finance that is made to generate positive, measurable social and environmental impact alongside a financial return. And this landscape is a whole variety of actors. It includes the traditional banks and lenders, although for them it's usually a small section of their spending and portfolios. We have venture capitalists who invest in new innovations and startups and scale startups to wider reach. And we have the philanthropies all the way up to crowdsourcing and microfinance. The impact finance, as it is defined by the Global Impact Investment Network, is a $1.2 trillion industry. So there's an annual spending and finance of 1.2 trillion, which is in itself a massive, but it's just a small portion of the total finance. But what is important here is that the GIN, when they survey their members in this community, that more than half seeks an expansion in food systems and also on sustainable cities. So there is an appetite in this arena to find investment outlets into the cities. Now, the process of impact investing is potentially a leverage to sustain food policy actions, and mostly then on sustaining and scaling actions that may have used public support to get started, but then will rely on economic support and external financing to evolve. Next slide, please. In the research, we defined 4 major roles for impact investors in urban food policy, and we do that to identify that, of course, they are financiers. Okay, you'll see this on the slide as the third role, but it doesn't start with finance. It starts with involving in impact investors as stakeholders into the urban food strategies and into the design of food policy actions. And they have particular contributions they can make here. The first is, as stakeholders, they can help assess risk, inform goal setting, and also learn from the cities, actually, from municipalities, on how you make your choices in the city on which innovations have potential for future growth. And this is important for investors because they make that decision on what innovations are scalable and investable. Also, they can inform the targeting of public finance towards the desired innovations that are not funded in the market. That's always a good principle, that municipalities don't spend resources that could also be leveraged in the private sector. And then towards the whole end of the cycle, there is the monitoring of impact. And here, investors rely on measurable targets, preferably linked to shared ambitions, which is actually a good sort of input into the policy process for a monitoring process for municipalities. But also interesting here is that the types of language or indicators that are used in the financial arena are not very different from those used in the cities. We worked in FoodTrails a lot with the theory of change as a concept for linking the kind of small scale interventions to the macro level food system outcomes and co-benefits. And investors work with that same logic and same language with outcomes, outputs of activities, success factors, and long-term outcomes and impact. Also, investors are very specific about the time horizon on which they expect success. And for them, those are decisions to then scale or exit from the market or from the innovation. And that is also a useful perspective, I think, that municipalities can perhaps adopt and collaborate on. Then on the financier, the next slide, please. Yes, over here I should say that as part of this identification of what cities find important, that in FoodTrails there was an activity to call for solutions within the startups and small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe on solutions that would contribute to the food policies in the cities. And you see a short sort of overview of the types of responses and that came from the private arena on 4 of the topics of the call for solutions. Actually, there were 7 in total, but and here you see that some of these are services that will be procured by cities. For example, support with developing education packages, and others are products that could be sourced for public procurement for the canteens. You see here some examples in the third category of that. But it's also about how to store, how to use public services to generate public outlets, and we'll come to that in a moment. Next slide, please. So what about the finance for investment? And here we discuss 3 types of instruments, and they all come with their own sort of rationale for cities and for investors, and it's important to make that match. So first of all, grants are, of course, what cities use a lot, and they are available for projects with low financial risk and with high in social environmental benefits. And then think about that the risk for finance is low because actually the owners of the grants are not looking for financial returns through providing them. And of course, these grants can also be combined with project revenues to get some sort of a matching funding. And a very nice example we have is the FoodTrails grant itself, which has been used very effectively in Funchal, the municipality of Madeira, to create an education center called the Fun Lab. And this was then part of a whole concept of working through education on food literacy in Funchal, and therefore create lifelong healthier consumers. And it started with creating curiosity and acquisitive minds. And there was a very nice in-kind investment also made from the University of Madeira, which partnered in launching this center. So typical, very good use of a grant. Equity investments then this is typically what venture capital firms provide. They are utilized for high-risk projects, high risk in financial sense, that are linked to financial, social, and environmental returns. They are often made in startups or in scale-ups. Sometimes also you find large corporations operating as equity investors for innovative ideas. And this is where so the question is, can you work with equity investors, is to a large extent answered by the question whether cities or municipalities can work with technologies that are coming in under these solutions. And one example that we discussed in our Investors Living Lab was the blockchain and mobile technology called the Energy Wallet, which was already operating in Groningen municipality to provide a social safety net and a cash transfer around the surging energy prices over the past couple of years. But now the question was, can that also be turned into a very effective food voucher scheme? And I say effective because the app has recruited almost 99% of people who they reached out to, as opposed to an overall campaign that just reaches 15% of its target audience. Next slide, please. A last type of a very interesting instrument that requires a bit more engineering, perhaps because it involves you as municipality yourself more intensively, is to think about social impact funding. It would involve performance-based contracts where impact investors provide funding to service providers for projects that reach certain thresholds for impact. So measurable impacts provide basically the unlock the finance or unlock the change in return. And this is very interesting, particularly where public institutions repay the funds when the project delivers a measurable impact. And that would then potentially lead to a higher financial return for the private investors. And one example that we have here is the Food Waste Hub in Milan, where they're exploring a social bond around the collection of food surplus for charitable donations. And perhaps Andrea can allude to this a little bit more. But next slide, please. I'm happy to take your questions and very happy with the collaboration so far on this and great work from my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Thom. Indeed, if you have any questions, you are welcome to put them in the Q&A function, and we will get to them in a little bit once we also hear from Sarah and Andrea. But thanks a lot, Thom, for this great overview of some of the different types of instruments that are out there. So now I will invite Sarah to share some insights from the city of Birmingham.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining as well. So I just wanted to share some of the insights of the approach that we've taken within Birmingham to deliver a citywide approach to food system change. And just for context, Birmingham is going through, as a municipality, is going through real financial challenges at the moment. So we have to be really well thought out with how we go about creating food system transformation to make sure it's something that can last in the long term. So I've pulled together the 5 stages that I think are really important that could apply to any city area. So I'm going to go through those today and how we did that where we are. So next slide, please. So the first step, and I think this is one of the most underrated steps that is actually really, really key to transformation, is having a core group that is funded to be able to coordinate this approach across the city. You need somebody whose role it is to work across the system. So in our case, we've now got a core team of 5 permanent staff. We're embedded within the public health department. Initially, we were 3 staff and temporary, but because we've delivered outputs, we managed to secure long-term funding. And importantly, what we've managed to do is align this team and our business as usual activities with something that they wanted to fund anyway. So in our case, it's tackling inequalities and addressing public health and nutrition priorities. But what we were able to do is within the remits of that is still deliver a system approach and adapt continuously to different local priorities, no matter who's in political leadership, no matter what's happening across the city. We are very adaptable whilst ensuring our core funding is delivered by making sure we cover public health nutrition. The next slide, please. The next thing that we did was to create a city collaborative. And what's really key with this is making sure it's really strong, authentic relationships with individuals. Not just an organisation is connected to another organisation, but there's meaningful contact points and people that will, out of the blue. I had an example recently where I emailed somebody late on a Friday night saying there's a finance opportunity, we can apply for this bid, but we need to apply by Tuesday. Are you interested? And we turned a bid around in just a few days and we ended up getting that awarded. That couldn't have happened without those authentic relationships in place that mean you can mobilise quickly. The other thing is really understanding what drives the people across your city and the different organisations, what will make their jobs easier, what barriers they face as individuals within the organisation, and also what the organisation wants. And also look at what's already happening, what's in the pipeline, what are they working on? Are they planning to do public procurement? Are they looking at economic growth in the area? Like, what are their priorities and how can you weave food into that? And then what we did was we looked at overlaps and partnership opportunities where the same action was united by having different partners coming together. Even though they came from a different perspective, we wanted the same outcome. So a lot of that has been happening around the supply chain and also around working with food businesses too. Next slide, please. So a little bit more detail about stage 3. So what we wanted to do was shape existing projects. These are things that are being funded already. It's not to say that they don't take investment, it's the fact that the investment has already been secured. So make sure you shape the things that are already happening in the city before you start brand new solutions. So what we looked at was what committed spend is there and how can we increase the value of those actions and strengthen them. So for us, that was looking at the food procurement within the city. There's multiple teams across the municipality that are involved with getting food into schools, for example. There's catering organisations, schools, food suppliers. So we're working collaboratively to see how we can strengthen that entire approach. We've looked at efficiency savings through collaboration to solve many problems through one action. So we secured external funding from a research innovation pot to look at food hygiene and supporting food businesses with food donations through to food aid projects. And all the partners in that project had a stake and an interest that aligned with their own priorities, which was really powerful. And we also launched grant funds to empower people and overcome the barriers they face so that the existing projects that are there are able to mobilise and deliver outcomes more quickly. And as Thom said, if you can prove that they're viable and there's investment in they're more likely to be able to secure future funding. So we intentionally redirected some of our funding towards supporting existing projects. Next slide, please. The fourth thing that we did was we looked at new opportunities and make sure we aligned our approach with what opportunities are out there. So, for example, within the cost of living response, we recognised there was lots of national funding being devolved down to local governments to spend to tackle cost of living. But we recognised that at the same time as addressing access to food, we could also improve surplus food redistribution, supporting local food infrastructure. So what we've been doing is working with the wholesale market to secure units, increase access to SMEs, whilst also supporting access to fruit and vegetables and food within the city. So although that's been funded through a cost of living project, it's actually having many other benefits outside of that area. Next slide, please. And finally, it's really key to make your actions effective and impactful. So what we found is because our proven track record of if somebody gives us access to grant money or gets us involved with a project they're delivering, we deliver really strong outputs and they want to engage with us again. They say every time we work with the Birmingham Food Revolution Partnership, we end up with very effective, well thought out projects and we want to do this again. And I think that helps snowball the effect and increase access to further funding. And it means that people see it as it's a good investment. It makes people have effective projects, but also it often is higher profile. There's lots of partners involved. And what it does as well is it inspires people. And on an individual level, people are passionate about making a difference because they've aligned with the priorities of their own work at the same time as meaningfully making a difference. And I think if you can align the personal drivers along with their organisational drivers, I think that's the most powerful thing that you can achieve across the city with securing finance, because you will have their hearts and minds engaged with wanting to make this a success too. So that was just a brief overview of how we've approached this in Birmingham, and then we'll pass over to Milan to explore their approach. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Sarah. Indeed, super interesting presentation touching upon many different things, like looking at the existing funding projects, how to redirect those to fit your goals. And also, I think hopefully we can also explore a little bit more the last point that you were talking about, more about monitoring and showing the impact of work as well. But indeed, let's pass it on now to Andrea for Milan.
Thank you, Madeleine, and thank you all to be here in your break of your day. My name is Andrea Patrucco. I'm working in the city of Milan. As Milan, we are leading this project, FoodTrails. This is a Horizon 2020 project in which we are trying to say that food policy are solution for cities that want to invest in local ecosystem, as was mentioned by Thom before. Today, I will present you how we are working, and we work in the last more or less 8-9 years on try to move resources to food policies and invest. In the next slide, I want to introduce more or less what happened, as I say, 9 years ago, when after the Universal Exposition that we hold in Milan, in 2015, with the topic that on food, the fact that one of the main heritage was to start a new food policy, and I want to bring your attention on some partners, key partners that help us as venture capitalists to start our journey. Cariplo Foundation. Cariplo Foundation is a bank foundation that support us today, but they start 8-9 years ago to help us, as I say, to analyze the food system in Milan, as was mentioned by Thom, and start to establish a food policy office under the mayor cabinet. To align the actors, the stakeholders, private and public, in our city was fundamental with the support of this foundation. Through policy brief, reports, different infographics and maps that allow to be aligned and to consider the food policy as a priority, as a solution to start to change our efforts. I want to say that the contribution, more or less, for this big startup phase was 150,000 euro per year. The situation after 9 years is completely different, considering that our office became a department after the last election. And so now we are managing public food services like the school canteen, the farmers market, and the food hubs with a budget of more or less 80 million. And I want also to mention the experience that we had during the pandemic situation, when the city invests more or less 20 million in food aid to answer the crisis. And of course, all the work done with attracting new funds, with European funds, regional funds, national funds, that are around 23 million. Today, in the next slide, please, I want to go through 3 different tools that we used in the last years. The first is what I was mentioning, the grant making. The second is to create public-private partnership. And the third is look through the internal municipal budget to find resources that can be driven to the food policy. If you can see this table, you see that the political dimension is really important when we speak about internal budget, because we can have decisions that are based on also on political commitment. That is one of our main driver in terms of to start and implement our food policy. But on the other end, the risk investment is not so high, is low, considering the fact that we have the experience managing services and activities. When we speak about grant making, so attracting new funds about European project, for example, like FoodTrails, the complexity is quite high because we need to compete with other cities, with other consortium. But in this way, the political dimension is not so engaged like when you are speaking in the local context. The risk is higher, in our opinion, considering the effort that we need to put to create good consortium and good proposal that will try to win new funds. So in the next slide, I want to start speak about on how we attract the budget in the last years. As I say, we attract more than 20 million in 10 projects, not just projects related to implementation projects that are under the ERDF project under regional authorities, but also European projects like FoodTrails or School Food for Change that are focusing on dedicated topic like school canteen. I say in the local context, considering that in Milan we are focusing our efforts in our pilot in circularity in food canteen, but also other projects like food sharing in Cultivate or Clever Food, that is another project connecting the different projects. We had the opportunity also to invest some grants from the international award that we got, the Earthshore Prize from the Royal Family in UK, about our food waste hub as a best practice, and other dedicated project more on peer-to-peer learning like Urbact or their project with the dedicated focus on YAF. About grant making and attracting budget, I want to say that it's really important to have strong leadership if a city want to lead a project. So give the coordination aspect to all the partners and define a specific topic for the proposal. Also, from the municipality point of view, it's really important to be in touch with other municipalities that have the same feelings, the same ambitions. Of course, there can be some constraint in external constraint when the activity will start. Of course, this is the main things that we need to follow to manage when we start the project and we want to finalize it. In the next slide, I want to jump on a really interesting aspect that for us was guiding the work with the private sector. When we start our journey in food policies, the food policies start engaging partners, local stakeholders through dedicated meetings, not through, for example, a food council, but dedicated channels like community of practices, meetings with key stakeholders that try to imagine how to collaborate. This point is really important because we are not creating a relationship, we are creating a co-responsibility of what the food policy wants to create in the city. And in this sense, in comparison with the previous point, here the leadership is shared with the local stakeholder. And this co-responsibility is managed through contract, for example, a public-private contract or letters of interest that can be signed by both the parties. Examples, the most important one is the food waste hubs that we start some years ago. We are increasing the number in the city also through the grant from the Earthshore Prize. This is a really simple example of partnership. The complexity of the management of this solution is very low, but it's very high. The commitment of the both sides of the parts that are in some cases third sector entities, people that are working in food losses redistribution, private parties, also like large-scale retailers and other kind of supporters, researchers, academics that are monitoring all the processes, and trade representative. This is one of our flagship example that we bring, and we have, of course, information also in our website. Another example that is connected more on the another part of the food policy unit that we are managing. Consider that we are owner of agricultural lands and farmstead. We are working with farmers, and I can say group of farmers that are organizing clusters. We call it district, rural district in around Milan. There are more than 5. And we, some years ago, with the support of the Lombardy region and the metropolitan city of Milan, we create an agreement under the regional framework law, in which we are creating an action plan to attract investment for peri-urban agriculture, and working with the reclamation consortia that are bringing water to the farmers. I think the most important part on this work on this point is the mutual trust that we create in our agreement with the private, especially giving the opportunity to them to invest with us, not just money, but also efforts. The last point in the next slide is how we can investigate internally in our municipal budget to drive some resources to specific unit. In this case, our food policy. As I mentioned, after the election, the food policy became not just a cross-cutting office, but a real department under the education. So when I arrived 3 years ago, we were just 5 people. So also following what Sarah was saying, so secure people working in the food policy is really important. Now we are more than 35. So this is an important aspect that I want to share. Not permanent people, also consultant that can bring the experience and knowledge on specific topics, from nutritionists, architects, agronomists, that working that we can work together. Here, the fact is to connect public services that the city is managing under the food policy. School canteen that are managed by the municipality through an in-house company, providing more or less 85,000 meals per day, and the cost of these activities, more or less 80 million per year, is under our control. Another point is the work with the warehouse and kitchen center related to providing the food to the school canteen is more or less about 20 million. Another point is related to the properties. As I mentioned before, we are working with the rent lease with farmers, with more or less 16 farms and 1,200 hectares that we rented for farmers. Farmers market are another driver that is really interesting, because we offer public land to farmers to sell the products, and we have a specific regulation on this. And the last point is the food aid system that is connected to the social services. Okay, I just want to conclude in the next slide, remembering that if you want to have a deep dive on all our activities, we elaborate a policy brief that is already ready and available in our website. So you can use the QR code or go in the resource area of our website. And you can see how the municipality of Milan worked in the last, as I say, 8-9 years. And more in theory, we create this policy brief that can help you on this. The last slide, that is the next one. I just want to close with this sentence related to the fact that our budget reflections start from the level of ambition. It was also mentioned by Thom at the beginning of this presentation, because we need to have to attract dedicated budget, not just external, also internal budget for food policy development, but with a design attitude, a co-design attitude with our private and internal actors, because we want to generate positive cascade impacts, not just as food policy for public services, but in our entire local ecosystem, food ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and also to Sarah. Both of you, I think, provided some really, really concrete examples of how you managed both to secure funding for your work, and of course, both cities have been doing some really impressive work over the last years through the Food Trails project and outside of it as well, to elevate food systems in your region. So thanks a lot for sharing those, I think, and hope that this was very tangible for everyone, for our audience. Before getting to the questions in the chat, which you can still bring in, I want to maybe ask you one question that maybe each of you can help answer a little bit. But I think we talked a lot about how to secure funding for starting off activities, but maybe could you say something about how do you make sure that you can sustain the activities after the initial launch of these? Who wants to comment on this?
I'm happy to start. I think the really key part is making sure that you're going with the momentum of what the partners in the city wanted anyway. You need to have investment in terms of strategies, in terms of plans. I think anything that comes in as something external, as a separate entity, is just as easy to drop. What you need to do is embed it so much into the fabric of how things are done that it stays. So I think you've either got to change the process or the approach so that it is fundamentally changed forever and they follow a new process. You need to make something easier or overcome a barrier. You need to solve someone's problem. And if it's doing that, then it's something that they want to continue investing in. You've got to meet the priorities of the decision maker. And importantly, it needs to be profitable. And I don't mean by that people getting rich. I just mean it can't be a money sink where it's not viable for anyone to keep doing that. So I think you've got to work out what benefits you can bring that make it something that people want to invest in and it supports enough partners to have continued investment. But those are just some of the top things off the top of my head, but I'm sure Andrea's got other ideas too. Or Thom.
I really compliment saying that for us, I think it's not simple to say, yeah, our budget is secured by a partnership on agreement, but when we approve our municipal budget and we see that the resources are vinculated and are connected to our department, this is really a responsibility by the department. It's completely different way to look through the internal budget. Is we are putting the same level the budget for the food policy with the social issues or mobility or other department. And we are proud of this, and I think it's one of the main results that we got from the effort that we put in on this. So not just us are speaking about food policy, but also the other department in the municipality, because you are important for example in answering when there are some challenging moments like the pandemic situation or the climate change, climate events that are connected on the agriculture, for example. Yeah, this is the point. When you speak about to attract external costs, the risk is more on how much you want to invest to prepare the attraction of the cost. For example, to answer an European call, you can start working 1 year before, prepare a good consortium, a good proposal. This is completely different to just jump on a project that was started in the last month of the project and on before the proposal and try to answer the call. Yeah, this is a completely different point. And so you need the resources, you need the expert, you need time. Is a really time-consuming activity. So I think it is actually important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrea. Thom?
Well, maybe a short reflection more from an economic perspective or financial perspective. Let's say that many of the activities that are funded through the food policy actions are not in place to generate finance. They're not there to generate a financial return. That's what I mean. But if they do, then the people inside the activities and the investors, or they will pick up on them. So it will flow. If actions are creating market-ready solutions or investment-ready solutions, then there is not really a gap. But there are a lot of actions that are designed in another way, and there I think it was very instructive to see how there are mediating organizations. For example, the Key Fund was an example we had in the Investors Living Lab, which was a mediator between local needs, neighborhood level needs, and financial opportunities in the market arena. So I think it's really important to have those connectors between the worlds of finance and food systems.
Great, thanks a lot. Before wrapping up, we have two very interesting questions in the chat. So the first one is about alternative food supply initiatives. So those that are more socially and culturally inclusive and sustainable. So here we're talking about food co-ops, cooperative supermarkets, etc. So the question is, how do the cities accompany and finance them? How are you securing? How are you able to finance them and secure budgets?
In Birmingham, what we've done is we've secured funding through cost of living emergency grant money for a unit within a wholesale market that is not only being used to divert food that would have been waste across the wider wholesale market into food aid, but we're also using it as a food hub to be a space where local food and cooperatives can have that as a delivery point within the city. So what we've been able to do is fund it through a different finance source to then also benefit using that same space for cooperatives, because we recognise that there's a lot of cooperatives and people interested in selling. There's a lot of people interested in buying, but not enough people are supporting the logistics, the infrastructure and the hubs. So that's where we're trying to invest, with having locations within cities that can support that infrastructure and reduce the costs.
Andrea?
Very quickly, in our food waste hub are organized in 70 square meters of space that was offered by the municipality. So this is a good starting point, because the NGOs can just bring and have no rent, but they use the space for free. We offer with the medium long term the spaces. We have, like in Birmingham, an external investor that invests on the refurbishment on the equipment, for example, for the fresh food in this 70 square meters. And then this is a good way to start our partnership, because we are offering something very concrete, and the NGOs, they can of course leverage their voluntary people that are, for example, living in the same neighborhood and using other resources like the vans that they use for other activities, also for the food waste redistribution. So yeah.
Great. And really, this is the next question we have in the chat is super interesting, and I think we could dedicate a whole webinar. So I challenge you to have an answer in 1 minute each. But how did you, Sarah and Andrea specifically, I think, create and get political buy-in from your councils in your respective cities? Were these officials that were already interested in the topic, or did it take a lot of advocacy? Of course, for both of your cases, you've been working on food policy for a long time. So I'm sure this is something that takes time as well to get. But if you both have a very short answer to give to this, it'd be great.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we already had political buy-in because the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, starting in 2015, there was an example of other cities doing similar work, and they could see what power cities had in the food system. But I think the other approach that's been really powerful is if you have a system strategy that's the whole food system, you can change your approach to adapt to different political interests. different portfolios. So we've aligned our strategy with different politicians who have different areas of interest and shown how it will deliver their priorities. So that's the way that we've taken it. It's such a broad area of work that you can find something that interests everybody. Then you get them passionate about a particular project, and you have different projects that you connect to different councillors for. So that's the approach we've taken within the city.
Thanks, Sarah.
For us, I think we are quite an exception because, in my opinion, people are creating really a difference from the political commitment. Our vice mayor is really guiding us from the last 10 years. So I want to say that this is the main fact from our side. So we have aligned the manager, the consultant, the political, and when we have all the planet aligned, everything is good in this sense. And of course, also another boost for us is the fact that we are managing the Milan Food Policy Pact that give us the fuel also for new ideas and new way to speak with the other cities, and so to be also politically engaged on this process.
Great, thanks a lot. Maybe Thom, if you have one comment to make about this.
Well, I think maybe what we try to do in FoodTrails, I mean, we're operating at the kind of a technical level, so not so much with the decision makers, but to show the urgency and to show the need of working with food in addressing the societal challenges is, I think, still a convincing story, and it can be a platform to bring the political decision makers on board, and their voices are necessary.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Indeed, I think we could have talked about this a lot more, but I have to start wrapping up now. And in fact, one thing that I would like to maybe still connect to this is that indeed we're in the last few months of the FoodTrails project. Over the last few months, we've been inviting new cities, we've called them Cascade cities, to join into the program and learn from the 11 cities that have been working throughout the FoodTrails project. And we've been organizing visits, and I think it's been really, really useful for these Cascade cities to learn. And one thing that we are developing as one of the main outputs of the project is based on all of these learnings, based on all of these very tangible results that we thought were very interesting to kind of help replicate, and the advice that the 11 cities were able to give to, let's say, those that were starting a little bit more at an earlier stage. One of the outputs that we're producing is going to be a handbook that will be published, I believe it's in September, October. So you can watch our website and all of our social media channels, because this handbook will really collect all very, very tangible tips and guidance to cities on how to develop and implement urban food policy. So please check those out. Very quickly, again, we're going to have the last webinar next week, next Tuesday at the same time. So it'll be a closing webinar. So you click on the link that was shared earlier in the chat, and you can register for that. And also the mini survey that we mentioned. And the last thing is also for those of you who already who would like to participate more, and who would also like to participate in a new peer learning exchange. We actually are, as Eurocities, involved in another project, Clever Food, where we are currently looking for 20 cities and entities to join our peer learning program on food policy labs and food policy councils. So if this is something that you would like as your city to start developing, or if you already have experience with food policy labs and food policy councils, we really invite you to take a look at the next link that we'll be sharing in the chat. I know it's a lot. Make sure to click all of them before we close the webinar in a minute, because the deadline is coming up soon to register for the peer learning program. So with that, thanks a lot to everybody. A big thanks to Sarah, Andrea, and Thom for your really interesting presentations. It was great. And looking forward to the final webinar next week. Have a nice afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.